Modern life depends on ultra-refined silicon. Every computer, phone, and server on Earth runs on billions of microscopic transistor switches etched onto these wafers. For decades, one company controlled the design and manufacture of these switches. Intel held a functional 90% monopoly over global computing power, generating cash so consistently that the boardroom eventually stopped viewing competitors as a legitimate threat. This dominance was built on Moore's Law. Co-founder Gordon Moore turned an observation that chip density would double every 2 years into a brutal corporate roadmap. Intel's engineers had to hit this deadline, or they would be rendered obsolete by the physics of the next generation. CEO Andy Grove weaponized this roadmap. He transformed Intel into a survivalist organization, operating under a single famous philosophy: only the paranoid survive. Grove enforced a culture of constructive confrontation. In meetings, authority wasn't tied to your title or your MBA. It was tied to the physics of your design. A junior engineer could challenge a vice president, and they were expected to if the executive's engineering logic was flawed. By the 1990s, this engineering-first culture made Intel the oxygen of the digital age. The Intel Inside campaign convinced the world that the only part of a computer that mattered was the silicon brain. The company became the most profitable semiconductor firm on Earth. But total dominance changed the company's internal incentives. When you control nearly the entire market, you can't grow by building a better product. You can only grow by finding ways to squeeze more efficiency out of the empire you've already built. In 2005, the board chose to prioritize financial optimization. They appointed Paul Otellini, a leader with an MBA background, as CEO. Under his leadership and those who followed, Intel shifted its focus towards stock buybacks and dividends, viewing high-stakes engineering bets as risks that might hurt the quarterly balance sheet. This financial-first mindset led to the most expensive rejection in tech history. When Steve Jobs asked Intel to design a chip for the first iPhone, the executive team calculated that the projected volume wouldn't justify the development costs. They looked at the spreadsheet, saw low margins, and told Apple no. Apple turned to ARM architecture and TSMC for manufacturing. By the time Intel realized the scale of the mobile revolution, their high-power chips were too hot and battery-hungry to compete. They were locked out of the largest consumer electronics boom in history. Inside their own factories, the focus on short-term profits caused a manufacturing crisis. Shrinking transistors from 14 nanometers down to 10 required massive capital investment, which leadership viewed as a drag on earnings. Intel delayed the transition for years, allowing their manufacturing lead to evaporate. While Intel focused on margins, TSMC in Taiwan perfected a different model, the pure-play foundry. They didn't design any chips. They only manufactured them for others. This allowed dozens of companies to pool their volume, giving TSMC the scale to iterate faster than Intel's isolated factories. AMD took advantage of this by spinning off its own factories and handing its designs to TSMC. Suddenly, AMD's processors were faster and more efficient than Intel's, leading to a massive loss of market share in the lucrative data center business. Intel's belief that owning its factories was a competitive moat turned into a trap. They were stuck with aging infrastructure, while their rivals utilized the most advanced manufacturing technology on the planet. The 2023 AI boom made Intel's architectural focus obsolete for the most important new workload in decades. As this diagram shows, Intel's specialty, the CPU, acts like a single elite mathematician, solving complex tasks one by one. But AI training requires a GPU, shown on the right, which acts like 1,000 simple calculators working in parallel. Because Nvidia had spent 15 years building the ecosystem for GPU computing, they captured 92% of the AI hardware market. Intel's share was less than 1%. Tech giants began spending hundreds of billions of dollars on AI infrastructure, but that money bypassed Intel. The company was left with a massive manufacturing division that was burning cash while its main products were ignored by the AI gold rush. The financial consequences reached a breaking point in late 2024. Intel reported multi-billion-dollar losses, cut 15% of its workforce, and was removed from the Dow Jones Industrial Average after 25 years. By prioritizing legacy PC profits and avoiding high-risk manufacturing upgrades, Intel failed to build the hardware infrastructure required for the future of computing. Facing existential ruin, the board appointed semiconductor legend Lip-Bu Tan to drag the company back to its engineering roots. He has separated the manufacturing and design businesses, slashing bureaucracy to put decisions back in the hands of factory engineers. Everything depends on a single gamble: the 18A node. This architecture utilizes backside power delivery, feeding electricity to transistors from the bottom of the chip to increase efficiency. If this works, Intel could leapfrog TSMC's performance for the first time in a decade. This pivot relies on a geopolitical shift. Global tech firms are increasingly wary of relying entirely on Taiwan for AI silicon. They need a domestic, advanced manufacturing alternative in the West, and Intel is the only company capable of providing it. The strategy is starting to show signs of life, with Microsoft and Amazon signing preliminary manufacturing deals. But these are long-term bets. Intel is currently spending billions to build these new facilities, while its core business continues to shrink. Investors are watching the 18A production yields with extreme scrutiny. For the valuation to recover to its historical highs, Intel must prove it can manufacture these chips at scale, and with the same reliability as its Asian rivals. Intel is trying to survive by remembering its own history. The company is learning that in the semiconductor industry, the moment you prioritize the spreadsheet over the science is the moment the downfall begins. Intel's future depends on whether it can become a paranoid engineering machine once again.